We left on a Tuesday. I remember that because the radio said it was the clearest day they'd seen in weeks, and the woman at the coffee shop in Santa Monica wished us luck. Wish I was going, she said. And we smiled, because we had the tank full and the top down and the Pacific looking like hammered silver all the way to the horizon. That was 11 days ago. Or maybe it was 11 years. I don't trust the clock in the car anymore. It flickers between 4:07 and 4:08, but the sun hasn't moved. Or it has, but sideways. We keep passing the same eucalyptus grove, and the third time I saw the same hubcap in the gravel, I didn't say anything. My wife didn't either. She just looked at her hands. The road signs are still in English, but the towns underneath them aren't. San Luis Obispo was there. Then it wasn't. Then it was, but the welcome sign was rusted through. Then it was brand new again, and we drove through it while a song played on the radio that I swear hasn't been on the air since 1993. Last night we checked into a motel in a town called Pismo. The man at the desk had no teeth and he asked me if I still had the dog. I don't have a dog. I told him that. He said, you will. We drove straight through after that. The coastline hasn't changed for 300 miles. Same rock. Same bird on the rock. Same curl of foam that never breaks. I looked in the rearview an hour ago and I saw myself. Not my face. The back of my head. Like the road was folding in on itself and I was watching us from the turnout we passed on Sunday. Or the Sunday before last. Or the Sunday that hasn't happened yet. We don't talk about turning around. We don't talk about stopping. We just drive, and the radio plays that same song, and the woman at the coffee shop is still waving. She hasn't stopped waving. I think we're still on Tuesday. The open road has always been the lie we tell ourselves about freedom. In America, particularly in California, the highway is our secular scripture, the promise that movement equals escape, that the horizon is a door and the accelerator is the key. We believe if we just keep driving, we can leave behind the job, the debt, the version of ourselves we've outgrown. The road is supposed to be the opposite of a trap. It is the unfastening. It is the breath after the long underwater stay. But what happens when the road refuses to let you go? What happens when the highway becomes the cage? This is the first and most insidious terror of the road trip that never ends, the inversion of freedom into permanence. You realize it slowly, the way you realize a fever is settling in. At first it feels like liberation, the tires humming, the windows down, the landscape sliding past like a deck of cards being shuffled. You were in control, you chose the route, you chose the speed, but then you notice the same billboard. Then the same rest stop. Then the same curve of asphalt that you definitely passed an hour ago, except it wasn't an hour ago, it was yesterday, and yesterday you passed it too, and the day before that, and the day before that. The road that was supposed to be a line becomes a loop. The path that was supposed to lead you away from something has instead wrapped around you like a throat. This is the trap disguised as transport. You cannot exit because the exit itself is part of the loop. You cannot stop because stopping only resets the circuit. The gas stations, the motels, the turnouts, they are not oases. They are checkpoints in a geography that has turned predatory. The road is no longer taking you somewhere. It is simply taking you. And the worst part is that you chose this. You wanted the freedom, and the freedom ate you. California makes this horror particularly acute because California is itself a promise. The coastline, the redwoods, the golden hills, these are not just scenery. They are symbols of possibility. We drive the Pacific Coast Highway and we feel expansive, unburdened, close to something essential. But when that promise becomes a prison, the betrayal is total. The same ocean that once seemed infinite now feels like a wall. The same sun that warmed your face now feels like a light left on in a room you cannot leave. The beauty does not fade. It becomes unbearable. It becomes evidence. You see the postcard perfection of Big Sur and you understand that you are not a traveler. You are a specimen, preserved in amber, pinned to a map that no one else can read. This is the terror at the heart of Keynote 1. The road trip that never ends is not a story about being lost. It is a story about being held. The freedom you sought has become a loop that will not release you, and the only thing worse than realizing you are trapped is realizing you walked into the trap with your eyes open, your hand on the wheel, your foot on the gas, chasing a horizon that was never there. The second terror is the landscape that knows you, but no longer welcomes you. In the beginning, the familiar landmarks are a comfort. You see the same diner you stopped at 5 years ago, the same curve of coastline from that vacation when the kids were small, the same sign for the same fruit stand that somehow still sells the same variety of avocado. This is the geography of memory, and it feels like home. But then the familiarity deepens into something else. You pass the diner and the neon is dark. You pass the coastline and the guardrail is rusted through. You pass the fruit stand and it is boarded up, the avocados rotting in a bin no one has touched in decades. And yet you are certain, you are absolutely certain, that this is the same place. Not a similar place. Not a different exit. This one. Yours. This is when the road begins to unnerve you. Because the landmarks are not wrong, exactly. They are just wrong now. Wrong then. Wrong in a way that makes you doubt not your location but your timeline. You remember the diner bustling. You remember the salt air and the sound of seagulls. But now the parking lot is empty and the seagulls are silent and the paint on the sign is faded to the color of bone. You tell yourself it has been years. Of course things change. But the change is not gradual. It is not the slow weathering of time. It is as though you blinked and the world aged 50 years, then blinked again and it was restored, then blinked a third time and it was abandoned mid-century, the cars in the lot models that stopped production before you were born. And then you see the other things. The small things. The phone booth that should not still exist, its receiver dangling, a dial tone humming if you press your ear to the grill. The billboard advertising a movie that came out the summer you graduated, the faces of the actors young and glossy and impossibly alive. The highway patrol car parked at the same overpass, empty, the door ajar, the coffee cup on the roof still steaming. These are not ruins. They are pauses. The world is not decaying around you. It is waiting. But waiting for what? And why does it seem to recognize you? This is the specific cruelty of the familiar made strange. You are not lost in an unknown place. You are lost in a place that remembers you, but remembers you incorrectly. It remembers you as a ghost. It remembers you as someone who was here before, long ago, and never left. The woman behind the counter at the gas station looks at you and does not ask for payment. She just nods, slowly, as though confirming something. The motel clerk hands you a key without checking the register. The waitress at the diner that was empty, that was abandoned, that was full of rotting avocados, sets a cup of coffee in front of you and says, "You always take it black." You have never taken it black. You do not correct her. The landmarks are not wrong. They are exactly right. That is the problem. They are right in a way that suggests you have been here before, many times, and each time you have left something behind. A part of the story. A year of your life. The version of yourself that still believed the road would end. And now the landmarks are waiting for you to return and reclaim it, or perhaps to finally stay. You drive past the diner and you do not look at it. You drive past the fruit stand and you keep your eyes forward. But you know, with the certainty of a fever dream, that they will be there on the next loop. And the next. And the one after that. Waiting. Patient. Familiar. The gas station appears exactly when you need it. This is the first clue that something is wrong, but you are too tired to notice. You have been driving for hours, or days, or weeks, the odometer stopped making sense somewhere past Bakersfield, and the needle has been hovering on empty since before the last town you don't remember passing. Then the station emerges from the heat shimmer like a photograph developing in slow chemistry. The sign is old, not vintage old, not charming old, just old. The plastic is cracked. The price digits are stuck on a number that hasn't been valid since the Carter administration. But the pumps are working, and that is enough. You pull in. You cut the engine. The silence is worse than the road noise. The attendant does not rush. He emerges from the office with the slow certainty of someone who has been waiting a very long time and has learned patience. His uniform is clean but dated, the collar cut wrong, the stitching a shade of orange that faded from public memory decades ago. He does not look at the car. He looks at you. Not your face, not your license plate. He looks at you the way a doctor looks at an X-ray, searching for something he already knows is there. He picks up the nozzle. He does not ask how much. He does not ask which pump. He inserts the nozzle into your tank and the numbers on the dial spin backward. This is the test. You do not know it yet, but it is. The gas station is not an oasis. It is an examination. The attendant is not an employee. He is an archivist, or a warden, or perhaps just a man who has been standing in this same patch of cracked concrete for so long that he has forgotten there is a world beyond the highway. He remembers you, though. He has always remembered you. He remembers you from the first time you drove this road, before you knew it was a loop, before you understood that some trips are not taken so much as served. He remembers you from last week, if last week exists. He remembers you from 1987, when you were someone else entirely, someone who still believed in destinations. You hand him your card. He does not take it. You offer cash. He does not look at it. He just watches you, and the silence stretches, and finally he speaks. He asks about the weather up the coast. He asks if the construction on the 101 has finished yet. He asks if you are still driving the same car. You are. You have always been. He nods slowly, as though this confirms something. He asks if you have seen the dog. You do not know what dog. He says, you will. He says, everyone does, eventually. He says, you have been here before. Not a question, a statement, a fact entered into a ledger that has been waiting for your return. You want to argue. You want to tell him you have never stopped at this station, have never seen his face, have never heard of any dog. But the words catch because you are no longer certain they are true. The numbers on the dial continue their backward spin. The nozzle clicks off. Your tank is full. You did not pay. You did not ask. You did not say thank you. You get back in the car and your hands are shaking and you do not look in the rearview because you know he is still standing there, watching, waiting for the next loop, the next version of this same conversation that has been playing out on this same stretch of asphalt since before you were born. The gas station recedes behind you. You tell yourself you will not stop there again. But the needle is already drifting toward empty, and the road is very long, and the next station looks exactly the same. You have been driving for so long that you have forgotten how to be alone. This is not a metaphor. The car has 2 seats, 2 seatbelts, 2 cup holders, and for the first several hundred miles you were certain you were the only one using them. But now you are not certain. You cannot pinpoint the moment it changed, only that it has changed. The passenger seat is empty. You can see the fabric, the buckle, the floor mat. There is no one there. And yet the car feels occupied. The suspension shifts slightly on curves, as though redistributing weight. The air in the cabin moves differently, stirred by a breathing pattern that does not match your own. You glance to your right and there is nothing. You glance again and there is almost something. A shape at the edge of vision. A reflection that does not align with the empty seat. A hand resting on the center console that vanishes the instant you turn your head. This is how the passenger arrives. Not through the door, not through an invitation. The passenger simply becomes present, the way fog becomes present, first a suggestion, then a thickness, then a fact you cannot deny. You do not know when they joined you. You do not know if they have always been there and you simply lack the perception to see them. You only know that you are no longer driving alone, and you cannot remember what it felt like when you were. The passenger does not speak. Not at first. They watch the road with an attentiveness that feels like judgment, or perhaps recognition. Their face is indistinct, shifting between configurations, never settling on a single identity. Sometimes they resemble someone you once loved. Sometimes they resemble someone you once feared. Sometimes they resemble yourself, if yourself were older, younger, quieter, already dead. You try not to look directly at them. You keep your eyes on the asphalt, on the endless repeating curve of coastline, on the same bird on the same rock. But you feel their presence constantly, a gravitational pull in the seat beside you, a silence that is heavier than empty air. When they finally speak, their voice is familiar in the worst way. It is your mother's voice, but your mother is 3 states away and has been for 20 years. It is your childhood best friend's voice, but you have not spoken since the funeral. It is your own voice, but the words are not yours. They ask where you are going. They ask how long you have been driving. They ask if you remember the night you left, and you realize you do not. You remember leaving. You remember the woman at the coffee shop waving. You remember the clear sky and the promise of the road. But you do not remember the moment of departure, the threshold you crossed, the decision that set this loop in motion. That memory is gone, and in its absence the passenger offers their own version. In their version, you never left at all. In their version, you are still standing in that driveway, keys in hand, unable to move. In their version, the road trip is a dream you are having while your body remains perfectly still. You tell them to stop. They do not stop. They narrate the scenery as though you were blind, describing the ocean, the eucalyptus, the same hubcap in the gravel you have passed 100 times. Their voice is patient, clinical, unbearable. You consider pulling over. You consider opening their door and waiting for them to leave. But you know, with the deep certainty of the loop, that they will not leave. They are not a passenger. They are a condition of the trip. They have always been beside you, even when the seat was empty, even when you swore you were alone. They are the part of yourself you thought you left behind, the voice you tried to outrun, the witness who watched you drive away and followed anyway. You press the accelerator. The road stretches ahead, identical to the road behind. Beside you, the passenger settles deeper into the seat, patient as stone, and begins to hum a song you almost remember. The Pacific Coast Highway has always been a ribbon of vertigo, cliffs dropping to water, road bending around headlands that seem to defy gravity. But now the bends are wrong. You have driven this stretch 100 times, in memory and in the loop, and you know where the road should go. It should hug the coastline, tracing the edge of the continent like a seam. Instead it veers inland where no inland exists, threading through hills that were not there this morning, emerging onto a bridge that arches toward an island you have never seen. The map on your phone spins and resets, unable to reconcile what satellites see with what your headlights illuminate. You are not where you are supposed to be. You are not even where you were. The coast has shifted beneath you, tectonic in its patience, and you are driving on a highway that no longer remembers which century it belongs to. This is the geography of the loop made manifest. The landmarks do not stay still because time does not stay still, and in California time has always been a fluid concept. You pass a motel with a neon vacancy sign that flickers in a font popular during the Eisenhower administration. The cars in the parking lot are finned and gleaming, chrome grills smiling like old movie stars. You blink and the cars are rusted skeletons. You blink again and they are gone, the motel itself gone, replaced by a vacant lot where wild mustard grows waist high. Then you round the next curve and the motel is back, neon buzzing, vacancy still glowing, a woman in a sundress standing at the office door watching you pass. She raises her hand. She does not wave. She simply holds it aloft, as though pausing a film reel, and you understand that she has been standing in that doorway since before you were born, waiting for a guest who will never arrive. The phone service is the cruelest detail. Your signal bars fluctuate between 1 and 4, never settling, never connecting. You try to call your wife, your mother, yourself. The line rings. It always rings. Sometimes it rings for minutes, sometimes for hours, the ringing continuing even after you have pressed end, the sound bleeding from the speakers, from the vents, from the hollow space beneath the dashboard. When someone finally answers, the voice on the other end is distant, underwater, speaking a language you almost recognize. They ask for someone else. They ask for a name you have never heard. They ask if you have found the dog yet. You hang up and the ringing continues, faint now, patient, waiting for you to try again. The coast itself becomes unreliable. Headlands shift position between glances. Sea stacks appear and disappear like exhalations. The tide comes in and does not go out, or goes out and does not come in, leaving stretches of wet sand that reflect the sky so perfectly you cannot tell where the land ends in. The water begins. You pull over at a turnout and walk to the edge, and the ocean is not the Pacific. It is a different body of water, older, darker, bearing ships whose rigging belongs to centuries that predate the highway. A foghorn sounds from a lighthouse you cannot see. The sound repeats at intervals that have nothing to do with time. You stand at the railing and the railing crumbles beneath your hands, then solidifies, then crumbles again. You drive on because driving is all you know how to do. The highway no longer promises to take you anywhere. It has become a creature of its own logic, bending not to geography but to some older law, some imperative that has nothing to do with human destinations. You are not navigating the coast. The coast is navigating you, arranging itself around your passage, a stage manager adjusting scenery between acts. The telephone rings and rings. The motel vacancy sign flickers. The woman in the sundress raises her hand. You drive past her and she is still th.